More coaching changes at Michigan to discuss. We got Justin Rowe on the line from Stadium in Maine podcast here at the Voice of College Football, breaking down the Wolverines. Hey, Justin, how's it going today?
Good, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing well. Enjoy the spring weather and the season of speculation concerning college football. All right, but we'll go to the here and now and what is known. And that's that the program lost Maurice Linguist to the Buffalo head coaching vacancy. And then a hire here just in the last couple of days in Steve Klingscale coming in from Kentucky. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely didn't think we'd see any more coaching changes in Ann Arbor here until at least come November. But it turns out, I thought it's probably a no-brainer for Mo Linguist to take a head coaching job there, right? You know, that's pretty great trajectory for him to go from position coach at the Cowboys to co-defensive coordinator and then get a head coaching job without even coaching a game here at Michigan. So, he's got to take it. It sounded like the money was about the same, and then it escalated duties and responsibilities. But I tell you what, here in Ann Arbor and, scrolling Twitter and media and the Michigan fan base, it was panic late last week when Mo Linguist announced this and when Buffalo came out and announced that he was going to be the head coach. Linguist had made a really big impact on the recruiting trail right away. Him being elevated to co-defensive coordinator with Mike McDonald was a pretty big deal. And it sounded like, he was a huge impact for Will Johnson, the five-star corner coming to Michigan. And then there were still rumors that Damani Jackson, the USC commit, was possibly going to come back and play with Will. So I think he played a lot in those recruiting impacts and commitments. And so it was kind of a panic. I think everybody thought, all right, we're in mid-May. Spring season has ended already. He has had a big impact on this defense. Now what do you do? But I will say I have to give a ton of credit to Jim Harbaugh for turning this around and getting a hire in Steve Klingscale within, less than a week here. And Steve Klingscale, he's not a schlum who they just picked up just because he was the only one available. He has been a legitimate, solid coach at Kentucky. Actually, this probably better than I do talking to Kentucky people and SEC people. Kentucky's defense in the last 5 years, while Klingscale has been there, has been probably the best in their entire program history. So he's done a great job. I've seen some film of him, working with guys as well, and I think he's relatable. He's similar to Linguist, that he will do great on the recruiting trail. I even saw it. He's going to be the defensive passing game coordinator as well as the defensive backs coach. I saw him making an impact on the recruiting trail for the defensive line already, though, too. And so I think he's a great recruiter. Him and Ron Bellamy have ties that go back a ways, and I could see them, too, kind of tackling this recruiting trail for Michigan and really going all out.
Yeah, the Kentucky defense has been one of the better units in the SEC, particularly in 2018, but pretty much overall just for the last 4 years since Mark Stoops has built that program. And as you mentioned, it's been from a recruiting standpoint that they brought in better players, but also a development standpoint that has moved those guys on to the NFL at much higher rates than they've ever experienced. And ironically, a lot of the recruiting success for Kentucky has come by them going north, determining that they couldn't go to the Deep South and compete with the rest of the SEC, but they've gone to Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Michigan to gain a lot of those players, and he's been pretty instrumental in those successes.
Yeah, he grabbed a 2025 star, I believe, Justin Rogers, right out of Oak Park, right out of Michigan's backyard, essentially, which was a huge blow. I know Michigan wanted him badly, and so that helps as well. He's already got his feet entrenched up here in Michigan and Ohio, and I know that's been kind of a sore subject for some Michigan fans out there, because Michigan hasn't necessarily been dominant in recruiting up here in the North, or as dominant as you may think, with teams like Michigan State probably on the downtrend. So that's definitely something that will help, and I think Klingscale can make a big impact there. But I'd love to see him go down and try to go to Kentucky, try to go to some of that SEC country that he has been traveling with Kentucky, and say, hey, we're building something pretty dang good up here in Ann Arbor too. You should come check us out. So it'll be interesting to see how he pans out as a recruiter. But I think, from what we've talked about with Jim Harbaugh, what he's trying to do with his coaching staff and go younger and relatable and definitely, have some fire and culture, I think Steve Klingscale fits that narrative. So he may not be quite as young as a Mike Hart or as a Josh Gaddis, but he is on the younger side. And so from what Mo Linguist was building here in terms of a culture in Ann Arbor, I think Steve Klingscale should be able to pick it up pretty quickly and continue.
Yeah, Justin Rowe on the line from Stadium in Maine podcast. You can catch him right there at Justin Rowe 92 on Twitter. Follow him again to his podcast, Stadium in Maine podcast, talking Michigan football here. Please like the video, share the videos out on social media, because if you enjoy the content, others will as well. All right, Justin, of course, we've got a situation where the dead period will end at the end of the month. Then we get into a period of time in which people like us are expecting the floodgates to open as players visit campuses across the country. Is there any particular lean or number of players that you're looking at, particular targets or big visitation weekends in June?
I don't really have a great pulse on exactly who will be coming, but I agree with you. It's going to be, hey, anybody and everybody come on and take a look, especially, I'm not sure if you've been to Ann Arbor in the summer, but that's about the best time you can come here. So I'm sure starting in June here, they're going to say, it's beautiful on campus. We want to have as many people come up here, check out some of the new facilities and the stadium that nobody's been in a year and a half or 2 years now. So I think it will be exciting to have a lot of these guys on campus. And it'll be interesting, too, to see what their plan is or what their strategy is going forward with recruiting, because Matt Dudek, the recruiting director, is now gone. And so, with a new recruiting director, with a brand new coaching staff, it's going to be a lot of new faces. It's going to be new everything. Obviously, you're still in the same city. You still got the same program, still that old winged helmet. But I think it'll be a kind of a little jump start for some of these recruits that maybe they had been talking to since they were freshmen. Now they're a junior, and it's all been turned over there. So I bet you there's a lot of guys that they maybe had fallen off with or not had their radar on for the past couple of years, because as freshmen they said, nah, I'm not really interested. They're going to start going after those guys again, I think, and say, you know what, we need to kind of just clear out everything, restart a little bit. Who's on our board and who can we go after? And then maybe on some of those guys, they can make a different impression and say, you know what, it's not the stubborn Don Brown on defense anymore. It's not Jim Harbaugh's eat the clock offense anymore. We're different now. We have a younger culture. We're playing music in practice. Which is the big thing. That I've said it a lot. I believe that's the key to beating Ohio State is playing music in practice. So I'm sure that'll change everything. But I do think it makes a little bit of an impact in terms of what a kid sees when they want to be on campus, when they want to, what type of a program they want to be in and everything. So it'll be interesting to see, if they reopen recruitment with a lot of these guys they may not have had touch with over the past couple of years.
And Justin, you brought it up at the outset. Anybody can look up the weather on the internet and see what the temperatures are typically like in different parts of the country at different times of year. But it's another thing to feel it and gain that experience, that impression, and to bring a recruit on campus in Ann Arbor in June when it's going to be a nice 75 to 85 degrees. where maybe they're escaping somewhere else in the country where it's 103
Right.
versus bringing them on campus when it's 22 degrees where it's 65 somewhere else is just, again, we can all read and know what it's like at different times of the year, but to experience it and to come away with that experience, there's going to be no way to measure it. But I got to think that it's going to help teams in the Big Ten and Michigan in particular.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why Northwestern built an unbelievable facility right on Lake Michigan, right? And guess what? Here's the truth about that. I bet you after August, that facility is about 40 degrees because it's windy coming off the coast, and it's right on there. But when they do bring guys around in June, right on Lake Michigan, it is beautiful. And so, I mean, it's beautiful anyway. It's an unbelievable facility. It's right on the water. Obviously, I'm not hating on it, but I think like that's my comparison. Northwestern does that, and Michigan, Ann Arbor in the summer. Like I said, there are a lot of people that come here because you really can't beat it. When it is 80 degrees, it's perfect. It's essentially room temperature, and the sun is out, and it's green everywhere, and it definitely is an advantage. So we'll see. I definitely agree with you that the Big Ten recruiting wise, June and July are the biggest times. It's when you get into November and some of those recruiting trips when they have to give them parkas and beanies and everything. I don't think they're as impactful as when you come onto campus in the middle of the summer.
Got Justin Rowe on the line from Stadium and Main podcast to break down Michigan football for us. Please like the video, share the videos out on social media, and subscribe right here. Got word in from 247 Sports in the last few hours that defensive tackle Jordan Whitley from Oregon State has received an offer from Michigan. He has entered the transfer portal. Did not play in 2020. Had some both injury issues, but don't want to speculate on this, but there was comments made in the 247 article about a tumor that he was dealing with at the time. In 2019, he had 13 tackles and 3 sacks and playing just 9 games. In regards to the fit along the Michigan defensive front, we've talked about Aiden Hutchinson coming back, which is a huge move for the Michigan defense. Your thoughts about the defensive line, and Whitley might be part of that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Michigan can use all the help it can get on the defensive line. And so, when you're looking at the defensive line in the depth chart, you've got Donovan Jeter, Mozzie Smith, Chris Hinton, Jess Spate. These guys don't have much experience at all. I mean, Donovan Jeter had played a little bit last year. Obviously, it was a shortened schedule. But that was really the only, experience that he's had. And Mozzie Smith is a guy that was supposed to be probably in the NFL by now. Coming in, he was a very highly touted recruit. And so, this, would have been, I believe, his senior year, if I'm correct. But then, so I just think that right now Michigan's saying, hey, we need help. Whether a guy like Whitley can actually come in and make an impact, I'm not sure, but we need to add depth anyway, because we need more than a 4-man rotation on the defensive line, especially when you go through a season. You know what happens when guys get banged up and they're tired, and there's an ankle tweak and they can't make it through a game. So it's not only inexperience, but it's lack of depth. And so even if this guy, any of the transfers or recruits that they're trying to get right now on the defensive line, even if they're not going to be starters, they're still really important to that defensive line because of that depth. And so, this is what Michigan's trying to do right now. And unfortunately, they can't be too picky. They can't say, oh, we're going to only go after guys that, played and made an impact at other schools. They're going to say, hey, you got a big body, come plug a hole for us.
Justin, I doubt if outside the 42 people that are locked in on Oregon State football up in the Northwest can really answer the question whether Jordan Whitley is going to help the team this year. So again, 9 games, 3 sacks. We shall see what the contribution is there if he chooses to come to Michigan. All right. We're in that time of the year where we've cleared spring practice. We're entering the summer months, and predictions will be flying all over the place. And predictions, when they're connected to Michigan football these days, also are connected, despite the contract extension, or what is technically a new contract for Jim Harbaugh is tied to his job. What do you think the reasonable expectations are for Jim Harbaugh and Michigan football this year in regards to him seeing 2022?
It's a great question. I mean, that's the ultimate question, right? And so I think there's a couple of ways to answer this. And one is, what should it be? And two is, what will it be? Right? It seems like the athletic director, Ward Manuel, has a longer leash on Jim Harbaugh than a lot of people thought that he should have. And so I think, if Michigan has another 9-3 season and goes out, probably loses to Ohio State again, I still think Jim Harbaugh has his job. As long as they are competitive still in those 3 losses, and it's not any type of blowout. Hopefully Michigan doesn't lose to Ohio State by 30 plus. Then I think that if you get to that 8 or 9 wins, I think Jim Harbaugh still has his job, as long as, like I said, it's not you don't lay an egg at Wisconsin and go down 35-0 at halftime, right? So on the other side, there are a lot of people that aren't happy with 9-3 and 8-4, understandably. The goal at Michigan is always to win a Big Ten championship. Right now, that's really difficult because you look at Ohio State and they are a legitimate top 3 team in the country and have, continue to reload. So I think it's very difficult to put a number on it. How I like to look at it a little bit better is he going to be going into those last 2-3 games of the season with a shot at that Big Ten title? You and I kind of talked about it before, saying, well, if you put a number on it and Jim Harbaugh goes 7-5, but he loses those 5 games by a total of 15 points and, loses to Ohio State 31-28 on a backbreaker at the end of the game, are you feeling good still going? Are you done with Jim Harbaugh then? Or is it like, oh, I actually saw something good out of that Thanksgiving Day or Thanksgiving weekend game? And so to me, it's more of the trajectory of this team. They obviously took a huge step back in 2020. I think they actually took a pretty big step back in 2019 as well, ending up 8-5. So, you need to see a pretty big leap forward. Do you need to see 10 wins? I don't know. I don't think, in order for him to have his job, in order for him to be off the hot seat completely, yes, 10 wins or above. In order for him to keep his job, I think 9 will probably get it done as long as you're competitive.
I think you stole a win from your team in 2019. I think they went 9-4, right? 9-4?
9-4? Sorry.
Well, I'm right there with you, Justin, because I don't think you can just say, okay, 10-2 is the standard, 9-3, fire him, or whatever. Because I think you really need to look at the competitiveness in the games. And as you discussed, the progression of the offense in particular toward something that's innovative and modern and going to be able to compete with Ohio State and other teams across the country. Now, the record is the record. And long term, if we're sitting here in 4 years and Jim Harbaugh's gone 8-4 every year, well, even if they're all by one loss, by one point, 8-4 is not good enough at Michigan. You're not going to compete for championships. But if 8-4 is very competitive this year, I think it bodes well, and that he should be given another shot to come back in 22.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think, I think here's where the fans and the media and a lot of people are divided is, everyone saw what happened when Rich Rod came in and when Brady Hoke came in. And so everyone's very scared, I think, or half the fan base is very scared. What if you get rid of Jim Harbaugh and all of a sudden 9-3 is no longer and it's 6-6 or 3-9? That's what a lot of people are scared of. And I think that's pretty legitimate. It's not that long ago that these fans saw that happen, right? And so But I think you can't be scared of what's going to happen in the future. You do have to make a decision here. So, but I agree with you. If it's a competitive 9-3, I think he keeps his job, and I think they give him one more shot, especially with a new defensive coordinator and a lot of new pieces on the offense too. I think you're going to have to see a lot of progression with that defense. They can't. This defense can't come out and say, okay, all right, we got 3 years until this defense is really solidified. It's their first year. They're not going to give them 3 years. It's got to be really, really a solid defense by year one. And then on the offensive side of the ball, like you said, Josh Gaddis is honestly maybe more on the hot seat than Jim Harbaugh. He's in year 3 himself of transforming this offense, and not a whole lot to show for it. Shea Patterson led them in 2019 to a solid, he was pretty dang good in terms of stats, in terms of everything, but he wasn't that 5-star, Justin Fields type guy, so I think it's on Josh Gaddis. I think it's on Jim Harbaugh and Matt Weiss, the new quarterbacks coach. They need to make either Cade McNamara or JJ McCarthy into a true 5-star, Big Ten quarterback of the year type of player. And that's going to be, I think, the focus for them to say, all right, do we have a playmaker here? Let's think about all the quarterbacks that Jim has brought in. And as Shea Patterson, Shea Patterson did well. Jake Rudock did well. Wilton Spate did well. Brandon Peters was all right. John O'Korn, not good. But, none of those guys are guys that are going to take you to that next level. So I think it's really the focus is either Cade McNamara or JJ McCarthy going to say, all right, is that the dude? And can Harbaugh actually develop one of those guys to be, a true playmaker? That's a big question for me.
It's a difficult schedule for Michigan, but they've got a ton of games that could break either way. Washington's certainly on that plane where you would not be surprised with that outcome going either way. Wisconsin, right on that plane where you wouldn't expect. Penn State on down the line. Ohio State would be the only team as we stand right here in May that you would think, okay, that's going to be a large mountain to climb to win that game. But the other ones, there's a collection of games that are very winnable, but they're also very losable. And so, man, I could see anything from 6-6 to 10-2.
I agree. I think that's, I've seen people starting to come out with their predictions, and some people say the ceiling is 7-5, and some people say, no, that's the floor, so I agree more that that's the floor than the ceiling. If the ceiling is 7-5, this is going to be a long season for Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines. But I agree. I think, but that's where Jim Harbaugh has struggled, is in those coin flip games, right? That you think about, there have been games that Michigan was probably favored to win in by 3 points or something like that, and they've come in and laid an egg. And so I think it's those types of games, the Penn States, the Wisconsins, the Indianas, that Jim needs to come in and say, hey, the pressure's on us now, and we need to go win these games. And so the one thing that Jim Harbaugh has done, he's won most of the games he's supposed to. He has. What he hasn't done is won nearly any of the games that he's not supposed to. If you want to be a great coach, you have to win games that you're not supposed to. I go back to Mark D'Antonio at Michigan State. He won so many games that he was not supposed to, and that's why he cemented his legacy, and that's why Michigan State was taken to the next level and went to the Big Ten championships and the college football playoff. So, Jim Harbaugh, there's no more excuses there, and you really have to, you have to win some of those games that you're not supposed to.
Got a little glitch there that I believe was me. It'll be fine. I'll just piece it together.
All right.
We're gonna have a glitch for just a second. Hang on. Hey, Justin, you got me?
Yep.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
My internet defaulted to another setting. It's done that
You're
like
good.
times in the last couple of days for some reason. It's never done that before. I may need to call them. So anyway, yeah, that all sounded good, made sense. Blah 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 blah. Okay. Okay. Justin, I hate to bring up the name, but Urban Meyer went 7-0 in games he was an underdog at Ohio State. That to your point right there. It rarely happened, but about less than one time a year he was an underdog and he won all those games. Of course, 2 of those against Michigan. All right, Justin Rowe, you see it on the banner. Follow him on Twitter at Justin Rowe 92, Stadium and Main podcast as well. Justin, we always appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.